Hi, my name is Courtney. I'm, as you said, a psychology major. This is my capstone project. I did it on the impact of social media usage on anxiety levels. So I wanted to look at does the amount of time that someone spends on social media actually affect their level of anxiety? According to Pew Research, in the US alone, 69% of adults and 81% of teens are active social media users. As of May of 2024, which I was astounded that they already have data for it, but over 5 million people worldwide use social media. So with the amount of content that's on social media, the good, the bad, the ugly, we get our news, whether it be family, friend, or international these days, all come from social media. So I just wanted to know if seeing all of those things, if that affects our levels of anxiety on a day-to-day basis. Um, I also thought, most people tend to see like the greener side of people's lives. People hardly ever want to put like all the bad things that are happening in life, only want to show like, I just bought this Maserati yesterday, and what they're not telling you is I now have $5 to my name, but I had that Maserati. So, it got me thinking like a lot of people kind of, end up comparing their lives, and then can kind of make you feel like you're lacking because you're not living like the same, alleged lavish lifestyle. Um, so with that, I decided to look at the multitude of people who try to live like those. They follow in line, but instead are self-sabotaging their self-worth and mental health in the process. I began to wonder if there is a connection between the amount of time that they're spending on their social media accounts, drooling over other people's lives, and what their anxiety level looks like. Okay, so this is my literature review. I will not read all of these to you, but so the general gist is that there has been some supporting arguments. There's been studies actually around the world that have taken note of it. Something that I've noticed a lot is that it tends to focus either on adolescents or very early age college students, talking like 18 to 22-year-old students, and no deviation from that. So I have, however, found a couple that have not found any correlation or have found negative association. For instance, I just found one from Ann Arbor that they had looked at specific sites. And so on a site like Facebook, they found no association between social media causing users to be more anxious, because they actually found that like people that were having anxiety tend to go onto social media to try to escape that reality. So they did not find the correlation between it making them more anxious. So my hypothesis, I hypothesize that there is an association between the extent of a person's social media use and their level of anxiety. Okay, so for my participants, I had most of the psychology pool from here, and then I also utilized the snowball method on Facebook. So I have a healthy mix of people from around the country. And so I had around 70 participants, still growing. So just like Tanya said earlier, if you want to take it, I'm still collecting some data. So predominantly, I've had more female participants than male participants. I have 56 versus 12, and only 2 people didn't actually tell me. The youngest participant that I had was 20, and the eldest was 77. My mean age was around 37 years old. The mass majority of participants did identify as white. Second majority was African American, and then Asian, Hispanic, and Latino, all kind of in the same 1 to 2% ratio. Okay, so materials used. So to quantify the anxiety scores, I used the GAD-7, which is commonly used. Like if you go to the doctor's office, you probably heard over the last 2 weeks, tell me how these problems have made you feel. And then they go down the gamut of if you felt, anxious, depressed, or if you felt on edge, anything like that. And so I thought that since this is how it's kind of like a traditionally used good application throughout the field to measure anxiety and like the severity of it, that I thought that this would be an applicable use. As for the hours spent on social media, there is no official scale available to actually quantify one's time on social media. So with the help of Professor Carson, we developed just a 0 to 24 hours and then slide your way on what you use or don't use. We use Qualtrics and everything to collect the studies. SPSS was then used to analyze the data, and then obviously people had to access the study, so they used whatever device. Procedure, so kind of the same thing I was just talking about. They were just asked demographic questions from the beginning. It was just age, race, um, and gender. So, and then these are a little bit of the social media questions that I had mentioned. The biggest one that I had kind of touched at was about the scrolling. So, because otherwise, I had asked, about how much time people, if you could get an influencer in the group, and so you could have, a good majority spent on time on just posting things. Otherwise, it was things like asking about like if they communicate with like friends and family and such on social media. And then the GAD, as I talked about before. And I also asked what social media site was used the most. Fun fact, Facebook. Everybody likes Facebook. Okay, so results. So unfortunately, my data did not support the idea of a correlation between social media use and anxiety levels. When ran through SPS, the Pearson R presented as a 0.029, which is not super. So typically want between -1 to 1, closer to 1 that you are, better. Nowhere near it. So this is why I say super if you guys can, participate. Maybe we can have some kind of significance. So as of right now, it's not looking great in our favor. And this is also sad because the Cronbox Alpha for my GAD was 0.90. So it did have, internal consistency and reliability. So discussion wise, so even though my discussion did not actually have, the correlation that I had hoped for, I have learned a lot about things that I guess I would kind of change or make different. There's numerous factors that could have contributed to the outcome of the study. Due to the findings, a new viewpoint on how to improve the study for future uses has definitely been a plot point in my life since this. Limitations, the biggest one was time. The awareness of social media use was also one that I had kind of gone with. People might not realize just how much time you really spend, like between if you're using it while you pee, or if people are, you wake up and it's the first thing you do is scroll through Facebook or, whatever. People might not really realize. As I said, no official scale for social media use, so it makes it really hard to be able to like replicate other people's studies because everybody was using something different. Sample size, like I said, we had only 70 people trying to grow it. The unanswered questions, some people did decide to skip out on some that would be like kind of the make or breaker on actually making a correlation. Formatting issues was one I also kind of discovered. Think that some people might have not answered some questions because they didn't realize that you have to move the sliding scale. Even if you pick 0, you have to move it out and then move it back to the 0 in order for it to qualify as 0. And then consideration of age group, as I mentioned before, a lot of these were taken by like college age kids. So we saw I had an average age of like 36. So had kind of questioned if maybe the fact that people that are a little bit older maybe aren't as in tune with the social media or aren't as like driven by the things that they're seeing on on social media, especially in the younger generations that are growing up on social media. You're, like I said, living the lifestyles of watching other people, so in older generations might not have that issue. So and then just other outside variables in general of people that have different types of anxiety and such like that. Conclusion, the study and others, like, yes. So, like I said, unfortunately, it didn't pan out the way that it would, but you guys are probably wondering why would we even care about this? But just in general, if there were to be a correlation in the future, the 2 variables can be important for counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists to potentially take their patient's social media use into their treatment plan if it may be exacerbating their symptoms. If you're spending all day on social media, it has to have some kind of effect.
Short question. Do you have social media and have you found that it increases your anxiety?
I do. So primarily I use Facebook and stuff and like, Pinterest or anything like that, but primarily Facebook. I don't use it, I guess, a whole lot, but I do have anxiety, not necessarily I think connected to that, but so I guess that is kind of why I wonder though, like if other people are definitely getting more hyped up by it. But yes, thank you.